Hello. What I'd like to talk about today is the unconscious or subconscious. This is a concept that is, fairly well known in psychology and pop psychology in particular. But I want to talk about how we can think about this and why it might be important to understand what it is that the unconscious tells us about ourselves and how we're actually interacting in the world. Unconscious or subconscious is this concept around what we know about in the moment, what we're attending to at the time. And the way it's usually couched is that you have a conscious mind that's aware of what's going on around you, and then there's this underneath, the subconscious or unconscious mind, where there's things going on in your head that you aren't engaged in the moment or aware of at the time. And the reason why this is important, in my opinion, is because it helps you to understand what's going on with people, including yourself. So when we believe that we're rational creatures, which all the science I've seen on it says we're not, and most of it indicates we're not capable of being rational to some extent. What happens is we get the concept that we know how to do stuff and we understand the stuff we're doing better than we actually do. So the way this tends to play out is we're hungry and we want a specific type of food. Now, it turns out that in many cases, the specific type of food you want is something that you crave unconsciously without really realizing it. This may be due to your gut bacteria, or it may be due to a mineral deficiency. Some people have, been caught licking chalkboards when they were young because it turns out they had a deficiency in minerals, and that's how they were making up for it. So your body sometimes knows, or at least your unconscious knows what it needs, and it'll go after it. And so, why did you choose pastries, right? Or why did you choose to get an ice cream? It turns out, your body thought it needed fat, or at least wanted fat. And sometimes it's what you want, and sometimes it's just what you need. And when you don't engage with that at the conscious level, your unconscious manifests it, and you rationalize it after the fact. You go, I was hungry for ice cream, so I got ice cream. But actually, no, your body needed fat and some yummy dairy, so it did that. And that's why your food tastes change, both over your lifetime typically and in the moment, right? You're not going to eat pizza 3 days a week every day, hopefully, although I'm sure some people do, because your subconscious mind, your unconscious mind is going to tell you like, no, we need this, we need that. And you may or may not listen to it. That's still true. It gets filtered through the conscious mind, but this manifests in all sorts of ways. So one of the more interesting ways that it manifests is if you feel upset unconsciously, and that's due to something inside of you, like maybe you're disappointed in yourself, because we're often disappointed in ourselves. Just look at how much we suck at doing the things that we say we want. What'll happen a lot of times is that will manifest as a projection onto other people. And this gets into psychological projection, where you have an unconscious feeling, you don't want to own it, right? You want to say, this feeling's being imposed from the outside world, even when it's not. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it's not. And so you make up a story in your head about, this person did this person said that, when that didn't happen. And you can feel upset at people for like a whole bunch of reasons, and those reasons can be false, and then you generate a story, a narrative in your head about why that happened the way it did, or why you felt that way, and the person did this or the person did that, when in fact it just never happened. And it's hard to get people to see you when they're manifesting their unconscious, because they in the modern age, we don't want to admit we have one. right? We're sort of hiding this unconscious thing from ourselves, so we don't have to deal with it. We're like, I'm not gonna deal with that. I'm just gonna pretend like everything that happens to me is not me, it's somebody else or something else or some force that's out there. And we do this quite naturally. And it's not necessarily bad, it's not necessarily avoidable. It's one of the things that meditation can help you with, is to get in touch with all your unconscious sort of influences and manage them. You can't suppress them, you're not supposed to try, but you can understand them better and negotiate with your unconscious. And a lot of people don't understand this, and so they really don't understand what they're doing and why. They don't understand the situations they found themselves in, right? They may go and get in a relationship with somebody and then not understand how that happened. That happens to people all the time, right? They talk about it constantly. They may take an action and then justify it later. I've seen people steal stuff and said, why'd you take that? And they're like, oh, well, this store ripped me off last week. It's like, you weren't at this store last week. Like that didn't happen. But they feel a real weight, right? They're feeling something. Whether or not, if their feeling is attached to, we'll call it intersubjective things that other people also experience, it's a different question. But they often gin up a story why it's not them, because they wouldn't do that. And consciously, yeah, they wouldn't. But unconsciously, the desire was there and it manifested. So what happens when the unconscious manifests? We rationalize it. We say, oh, I did that for this reason. And we're not dealing with it, though. We're not coming forthrightly with it and saying, well, this is really just something I wasn't aware of in myself. And there's a lot of problems that this leads to. We look back on our lives and we don't, like, well, why did that happen? Why did I do this last week? Why did I eat that pint of ice cream when I wasn't even hungry? Why was I crying at that scene in the movie, right? We're not always in touch with these things. And over long periods of time in particular, you can look back and go, wow, that was just a disastrous period of my life where I made a bunch of bad decisions that I didn't understand. This is why a lot of people don't do journals, because if you do a journal and then you read it, you're like, what happened? How did these things go on like this? How was I, where did this time go? Or what was I doing during all this time? Or, what manifested here? So people often don't know for themselves. They have no idea what was going on. So that's just something to be aware of, and we need a way to surface our unconscious thoughts and desires so that we can approach them forthrightly, so that we can really dig into them and say, well, what am I up to? Because sometimes maybe I don't know what I'm up to. Maybe I don't know why I'm doing what I'm doing. How did I get hooked up with this person? Why is this person my friend? Why wasn't I better to this person or this relative who's treated me well? Like, these are all things that manifest that we don't understand in any significant fashion. So that's just something we have to watch out for in the world. And like I said, you can see this manifest in others. Usually it shows up as psychological projection. They'll get angry at you when you didn't do anything wrong, and you're like, what happened? And it's good to, you're not going to change it necessarily, but it's good to know what happened so you can meet it with grace and compassion. You can say, oh, they're just having a bad day. It's not me, right? And because sometimes it's not you. You got to be careful with that, because sometimes maybe you're being a jerk. I do that all the time. So, that could be. But sometimes it's not you, and you don't deserve the blame, even though you have to take the punishment, we'll say, make a little sacrifice for somebody else's well-being. That's always a good thing to do. So it's good to think about that we have an unconscious, and it drives our behavior, sometimes without our knowledge or understanding. And sometimes we justify that behavior with these very complicated narratives, when the simple fact of the matter is we were moved to do this and we didn't have the awareness. And this isn't about willpower. That's a different problem. We didn't have the awareness to resist in the moment. we were possessed by the passion of the moment or something. That's your unconscious operating. In order to have willpower, you have to notice something. But if you don't even notice it, willpower doesn't come into it at all. And there are Stoic practices, for example, where you can cultivate the space to notice things better. And then you can start to apply your will. But your will really doesn't show up until after you've cultivated the space to notice your behavior, to understand what your interactions are. So that's all very important. And just understanding, having an idea of this unconscious, the things that we're not consciously aware of, the things that are in our unconscious awareness, right, that are driving us and moving us, that we're not facing forth rightly, is helpful because it gives us a sense for how much control we don't have over ourselves. So we'd like to have more control over ourselves, but sometimes we don't have that much control. And that's just a good thing to recognize and acknowledge and understand and deal with. And a lot of things creep up in your unconscious. A lot of things are there sort of hiding. This is where meditation can be helpful because it can reveal some of these things. Therapy can also be helpful. Just talking to a friend can be helpful. Sort of talking out what you're doing, because as you know, a lot of things in the unconscious can't be surfaced because you're not verbalizing them. You can verbalize them in your head. That's useful. It's a good step. But it's better to verbalize them to others, get some distributed cognition going with another person or people. Let them help you figure out what these things are all about so that when they do move you, they don't move you in a bad direction. And so there's a way in which understanding the unconscious helps us and helps ourselves. Because, again, we can free ourselves from the idea that we're always at fault just because someone's angry at us. People are angry at me all the time, and I realize immediately they're not mad at me. They don't even know I'm there. Right? They're projecting anger at me. They're like, "Oh, shut up, Mark. What are you doing? You stop talking about that." And what the hell do you know? Fair enough. But often it's because they had a bad day, and they don't really understand that. And they see it and they go, oh gee, I'm sorry about that. Like, I didn't mean that. It's like, yeah, whatever. I know. All right. And people often do this when they feel like their views of the world or their values or their virtues have been compromised. And you can obviously trip this accidentally in a way that they won't even notice. That happens. But it can be tripped by other people, and then they cannot understand that. Maybe they're at work. You can't really tell your boss off. Hopefully you don't do that. And then the next person you run into that's, is not your boss, you are ready. You're ready. And you see those signals everywhere, even when they're not there. And then you start going off on that person instead of your boss. Things like that happen. We do that to other people. Other people do that to us. We just have to have some understanding so that we can make it better for them and for us. And sometimes, you don't even have to call it out necessarily. Sometimes you just have to understand and not take things personally when they're not personal. And that's hard to judge, granted, but it can be done. And, it's really all about getting along with people. And the best way to get along with people is to realize that they're flawed just like you. Except you're probably flawed worse. You just don't see it, which is scary. It's scary that we don't see how flawed we are. We don't really know what we don't know. There's the sort of known unknowns and the unknown unknowns, and we have that about ourselves. And part of that is your unconscious. So just bringing it into awareness, thinking about every once in a while, what am I really up to? Why did this happen? What's going on in my head? What's going on in that person's head? They seem a little more angry than usual, right? Or they seem upset about something, or they're more emotional than normal. All of that is really all about the unconscious mind. And it's really sneaky. A lot of people, this was told to me the other day, a lot of people they want you to make a decision for them so that they can see how a decision is made and then accept or reject the decision. Now, this can be really annoying. Like, oh, you wanted me to make a decision, whether explicitly or implicitly. Somebody asks you, where do you want to go for dinner? They ask you where you want to go for dinner. They're asking you to make a decision. So if you say, well, I want Mexican food, and they go, oh, I don't like Mexican food, it can get a little annoying. Why did you ask if you were going to reject my answer? But really, they don't have enough contrast. They don't have a container to see the decision point of where to eat. And so they're asking you to provide them with a landscape of contrast to help them make a decision. And once you understand that, that behavior is a little more reasonable, right? It's a little more intelligible. It's understandable to you. And then you can deal with it better. Instead of getting upset, which is what I do. Probably not going to help me, but it should. You get upset. You could get angry about that over years of having people do it to you, right? You could be resentful. You could stop trying to answer the question and say, oh, I don't know, whatever you want, which isn't helpful because now you're not providing the person with what they need, even though they may not know to ask for it. Because again, it's their unconscious at work too. So there's a way in which the unconscious things that are manifesting can make each party worse. But if you understand it, you can understand you have an unconscious response. They have an unconscious response. A little grace, maybe a lot of grace, will go a long way to making sure that doesn't get worse for both of you. So that's something to think about and to grapple with. And hopefully it's, a little bit of attention towards it will help you to engage with it better in a more healthy way that helps you to sort of move forward in your life and not be quite so sensitive to these things, and also meet these people with grace and give a little grace to yourself, because there's things driving you and everybody else that we don't really engage with. So I hope you find this helpful, and I hope that if you choose to engage, you can give me some feedback on how I'm doing and whether or not you want more of this sort of thing, or more dialogues or whatever else, because really that's what this is about. It's a community effort, it's cooperation. So I'm trying to reach out and connect and give people tools that they can use that are hopefully useful, that they want to use. And I think I'm doing that because people are watching the videos. Never enough, of course, but plenty to help fix even a little part of the world. Like if I make one person's life better just a little bit for 10 minutes, mission accomplished. And if you choose to find a topic or you have a curiosity, leave it in the comments. I'll try to do a video on it if I can. Can't promise that I could do videos on things, but I try. I have a big list. I can't do most of these. So I'm still working through how to explain some of this stuff and make it accessible. And if I'm doing that, let me know. If I'm not doing that, let me know. Let me know what I can do better. And I just want to express my gratitude that anybody at all watches any of this stuff. And so I want to thank you for your time and attention.